The Empire had conquered 17 galaxies. Their warships numbered in the billions. Their technology could reshape planets and dim stars. For 12,000 years, they had been the supreme power of the known universe, and no species had ever challenged their dominance. But even they had made mistakes. Earth had been one of them. High Commander stood on the observation deck of the Imperial flagship, staring at the blue marble floating in the darkness of space. His 4 eyes narrowed as ancient memories stirred within him. He had been young when the Empire first discovered this world, barely old enough to serve as a junior officer. Now, 500 years later, he had returned as the leader of the largest military expedition in history. "Scans confirm it, Commander," reported his second officer. Her voice carried a hint of disbelief. "The planet is inhabited. Population estimates suggest approximately 40 billion sentient life forms." Felt his scales tighten against his body. This was impossible. When they had abandoned Earth 5 centuries ago, they had left nothing behind but ruins and death. The humans, that primitive species of soft-skinned bipeds, should have been extinct within a generation. "Show me the surface," he commanded. The holographic display flickered to life and watched in stunned silence. Cities stretched across continents, their towers reaching toward the clouds. Vehicles moved through the skies in organized patterns. Ships floated on the oceans, massive vessels that dwarfed anything the humans had possessed when they had first arrived. "This cannot be correct," whispered. "Our ancestors destroyed their civilization. We poisoned their atmosphere. We burned their crops and salted their lands. The extinction protocols were thorough." Remembered. He remembered the screaming, the fire, and the death. He remembered the human leaders begging for mercy, promising anything if they would spare their children. He remembered the Emperor's decree that Earth was to be cleansed completely, not because humans were a threat, but because they were an insult. A species so weak, so fragile, so pathetically short-lived had no right to exist in a universe ruled by the... The Empire had spent 3 years destroying human civilization. They had bombed the cities, unleashed biological weapons, and poisoned the water supplies. When they finally departed, satisfied that no human could possibly survive, they had sealed the system and marked it as a dead zone on their star maps. For 500 years, no had returned to Earth. There had been no reason to. The humans were dead, and dead species held no interest for the Empire. But now was looking at a world very much alive. "Attempt communication," he ordered. "Standard diplomatic frequencies." The communication officer worked his console, sending out the traditional greeting. For several long moments, nothing happened. Then the main screen flickered, and a human face appeared. Had expected to see fear. He had expected the primitive terror that all lesser species displayed when confronted with might. Instead, the human looked at him with an expression he could not identify. The creature's face was calm, almost peaceful, but there was something in its eyes that made uncomfortable. "We wondered when you would return," the human said. Its voice was clear and steady, translated by the ship systems into language. "You took longer than we expected." Straightened his posture, reasserting his dominance. "I am High Commander of the Empire. You will explain how your species survived our cleansing." The human smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "You made a mistake, Commander. A very old mistake that many species have made throughout history. You assumed that because we were weak, we would stay weak. You assumed that because we died easily, we would accept death." "Your species was primitive," countered. "You had barely achieved spaceflight. You possessed no weapons capable of harming our ships. You were nothing." "We were nothing," the human agreed. "But we had something that your kind never understood. We had will. We had the capacity to suffer, to endure, and to remember. Your ancestors killed 8 billion of us, Commander. They left behind perhaps 50,000 survivors, scattered across a poisoned world with no resources, no technology, and no hope." The human paused, and that strange smile widened. Do you know what happened next? Said nothing. He was beginning to feel something he had not experienced in centuries. It took him a moment to recognize the emotion. It was unease. We survived, the human continued. We adapted. We evolved. Your poisons became our medicine. Your destruction became our foundation. Every child born after your departure grew up hearing stories of what you did. Every generation passed down the memory of fire and death, and every single one of us made a choice. What choice? Demanded. To wait. The word hung in the air between them, felt his scales ripple with sudden cold. For 500 years we rebuilt, the human explained. We did not expand beyond our system. We did not broadcast signals into space. We did not do anything that might attract your attention. We stayed quiet, stayed hidden, and stayed patient. All the while we were preparing. Preparing for what? The human's eyes locked with, and for the first time the High Commander saw what had been hiding behind that calm expression. It was not fear. It was not submission. It was hunger. For you. Warning alarms screamed across the bridge. Officers shouted reports, their voices overlapping in panic. The tactical display showed objects emerging from behind Earth's moon, from the asteroid belt, from the gas giants. Thousands of objects. Millions of objects. What is happening? Roared. Commander gasped, her face pale with terror. We are surrounded. The objects. They are ships. Human ships. Estimates suggest. Commander, the estimates suggest over 2 million vessels. Stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The fleet numbered 12,000 ships. They had believed this force to be overwhelming, capable of conquering any system in the galaxy. But now they were outnumbered by a factor he could not calculate. How? He demanded, turning back to the human on screen. How is this possible? You taught us, the human replied. You taught us that the universe is cruel. You taught us that mercy is weakness. You taught us that only power matters. We were very good students, Commander. The first human ships came into visual range and felt his heart stop. They were massive, each one larger than the Imperial flagship. Their hulls were black as the void itself, and they moved through space with a grace and speed that should have been impossible. For 5 centuries, we have done nothing but build and prepare, the human said. We created new technologies. We invented new weapons. We mastered sciences your empire has never even imagined, all of it focused on a single purpose. You cannot fight the empire, said, but his voice had lost its authority. We span 17 galaxies. Our resources are infinite. Even if you destroy this fleet, more will come. The human nodded. We know. That is why we are not going to fight you, Commander. We are going to erase you. The screen split into multiple views, showing worlds across the empire. Watched in horror as human ships appeared above colony after colony, world after world. They had not just been hiding in this system. They had been spreading throughout the galaxy, positioning themselves for this moment. Impossible, he whispered. We would have detected you. You stopped looking, the human replied. 500 years ago, you declared us extinct and never thought of us again. You never considered that we might crawl out of the grave you dug for us. You never imagined that we might spend every waking moment planning our revenge. The first planet dissolved under human weapons. Watched his burn, its atmosphere stripped away in seconds, its surface reduced to molten glass. The screams of billions of souls echoed through the communication channels before falling silent. Stop this, pleaded. We can negotiate, we can offer reparations, we can. No, the human cut him off. You cannot. Do you remember what your emperor said when our leaders begged for mercy? He said that mercy was a concept for equals, and humans would never be equal to the... The human leaned closer to the screen, and its eyes were no longer calm. They burned with a fire that had been building for 5 centuries. He was right about one thing, Commander. We are not equals, not anymore. One by one, worlds fell. The greatest empire the galaxy had ever known was being dismantled in hours. Ships that had conquered civilizations were reduced to debris. Colonies that had stood for were wiped from existence. Watched it all from his bridge, surrounded by officers who no longer looked to him for orders. There were no orders to give. There was nothing to be done. "Why?" he asked finally. "Why destroy everything? You have won. You have proven your strength. Why not show mercy?" The human considered the question for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was soft, almost gentle. "Because you did not." The connection terminated. The screen went dark, and the last thing High Commander saw before his ship was consumed by human fire was the face of that human, smiling with the satisfaction of a species that had finally settled its debt. Across the galaxy, they screamed. They fought and fled and prayed to gods who did not answer. They begged for mercy from a species that had none left to give. Within a single solar year, the Empire was gone. Every world was burned. Every ship was destroyed. Every living member of the species was hunted down and eliminated. The humans were thorough in ways they had never imagined possible. When the work was done, humanity stood alone among the stars. Other species watched from the darkness, terrified of drawing attention to themselves. None of them dared speak. None of them dared move. The humans did not celebrate. They did not boast or glory in their victory. They simply returned to their worlds and continued living their lives, as if the destruction of a galactic empire had been just another task to complete. But they never forgot, and they never stopped watching. In the quiet halls of Earth's government, a new decree was issued. It was simple and brief, meant for any species that might someday grow ambitious enough to threaten humanity. "We remember everything, we forgive nothing, and we can wait as long as we need to." The universe had learned a valuable lesson about humanity that day. They were not the strongest species. They were not the oldest but they were patient. They were determined. And they had proven beyond any shadow of doubt that underestimating humans was the last mistake any species would ever make. The stars themselves seemed to grow dimmer after that, as if the cosmos itself recognized that a new power had risen. Not an empire of conquest, but something far more dangerous. A species that remembered. And in the end, that was enough.